Ms. Thompson, look up from those papers and listen to me.
I'm finalizing the budget. What is so urgent?
This is Sandra Thompson, a veteran school principal who has just realized her 14-year career is ending in a wood-paneled office. In less than 10 seconds, she will be forced to stand up from her desk, leaving behind a stack of budget reallocations that were actually a roadmap to a $1.4 million heist.
The district audit found $1.4 million in the lunch fund diverted to your personal
That was a
account.
reallocation for students.
I'm finalizing the budget, she'll claim as the officers approach, but the district audit has already told the real story. What started as a few diverted checks for student services grew into a systematic looting of the school's lunch fund, leaving thousands of low-income students with smaller portions while she funded a secret life of luxury. Before we go further, have you ever wondered why your local school's facilities are crumbling while the administration drives brand new cars? Have you ever suspected that the money meant for your children's education was being siphoned off by the people in charge? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to the channel. We cover cases of public betrayal and institutional theft every single week, exposing the stories that hide behind closed office doors. Sandra Denise Thompson was born on June 4, 1974, in Harvey, Illinois, a town where the pride of the community was inextricably linked to its school system. Her father was a foreman at the local steel mill, a man who believed in the power of a firm handshake and a solid education. Her mother was a beloved kindergarten teacher who spent 40 years in the same classroom, molding the minds of 3 generations of Harvey residents. Sandra was the golden child of the family, the one who never missed a day of school, the one who won every spelling bee, and the one everyone expected to lead the district one day. Her senior yearbook quote at Thornton High read, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." She followed her mother's footsteps into education, graduating from the University of Illinois in 1996 with a degree in educational leadership. She was hungry, ambitious, and deeply connected to the community. Her rise through the ranks of Harvey School District 152 was nothing short of meteoric. She started as a 4th-grade teacher, moved to assistant principal within 5 years, and by 2010, she was named the head principal of a large elementary school. Her starting salary was $92,000, a figure that placed her comfortably in the upper echelon of the town's earners. To the parents and students of Harvey, Sandra Thompson wasn't just an administrator, she was a pillar of the community, the woman who knew every child by name and every family's struggles by heart. But as the years passed, the pillar began to develop cracks. To understand how Sandra Thompson stole $1.4 million from a lunch fund, you have to understand the unique financial ecosystem of a public school district. Schools like those in Harvey rely heavily on federal and state grants, particularly the National School Lunch Program. This program is designed to provide free or reduced-price meals to students from low-income families. In a district where nearly 80% of students qualify for aid, the lunch fund is one of the largest and most active accounts in the entire budget. It is a revolving door of money meant for milk, bread, produce, and, most famously in this case, chicken wings. As principal, Sandra Thompson had nearly autonomous control over her school's discretionary spending. While the district's central office handled major contracts, the individual school lunch funds were often managed locally for supplemental needs. In 2014, the district implemented a new efficiency protocol that allowed principals to approve vendor payments up to $15,000 without a secondary signature from the school board. The policy was intended to speed up the procurement of fresh food and emergency repairs. For Sandra, it was an open door. The scheme began in October of 2014. It started with a single check for $2,400. Sandra created a fake invoice for emergency refrigeration repair from a company called Thompson & Associates Maintenance. The company didn't exist. The Associates was simply a bank account she had opened at a regional credit union using her maiden name. She approved the invoice herself, printed the check, and deposited it the next day. No one noticed. The school's refrigerator was fine, and the repair was buried in a 300-page monthly financial report that the school board rubber-stamped in less than 10 minutes. Emboldened by the ease of the first theft, Sandra began to look for a more sustainable way to siphon larger sums. She found it in the school's relationship with a major food distributor. The school ordered thousands of pounds of food every week, and the invoices were often chaotic and difficult to track. Sandra realized that if she placed ghost orders for popular items, items that could be easily explained away as being consumed by the students. She could divert the funds without raising an eyebrow. Her weapon of choice was chicken wings. Between 2016 and 2023, Sandra Thompson placed orders for more than 11,000 cases of chicken wings that were never delivered to the school. These weren't small orders. A case of chicken wings can cost upwards of $100. By ordering dozens of cases at a time and having the invoices sent to a secondary warehouse that was actually a storage unit she rented, she was able to generate millions of dollars in fraudulent charges. The distributor, assuming the orders were legitimate requests from a longtime client, processed the payments. Sandra, acting as the school's representative, would then intercept the checks and funnel them through a complex web of shell companies. For 9 years, the students of Harvey ate less, so Sandra Thompson could have more. While the lunch menu shifted from fresh fruit and hot entrees to processed snacks and smaller portions, Sandra's personal life underwent a radical transformation. Her co-workers began to notice the signs, but no one wanted to believe that the pillar of Harvey was a thief. She traded her modest SUV for a brand new Maserati. She started wearing designer suits to school board meetings, outfits that cost more than some of her teachers made in a month. She took educational retreats to the Caribbean and Las Vegas, posting photos of herself in 5-star suites and at high-stakes poker tables. When colleagues asked how she could afford such a lifestyle, she had a practiced response. "My husband's family has some real estate holdings in the city," or "I've been very lucky with my investments." Because she was so well-liked, and because she was so successful at keeping the school's test scores up, the questions never turned into investigations. People wanted to believe her. They wanted to believe that a woman who spent 10 hours a day at the school was just as dedicated as she appeared to be. The system was built on the assumption of integrity. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 666, theft or bribery concerning programs receiving federal funds is a major federal crime. But within the walls of a school district, the audits are often more about math than they are about reality. An auditor looks to see if the check matches the invoice. They don't go to the cafeteria to count how many chicken wings were actually served to the 4th graders. Sandra knew this. She made sure her paperwork was immaculate. Her reallocations always balanced on paper. If a line item for student services was over budget, she would simply move money from the maintenance fund. She was a master of the shell game, and for nearly a decade, the shells never stopped moving. The beginning of the end came in January of 2024. The district had hired a new business manager, a no-nonsense auditor named Robert Miller, who had spent 20 years in the private sector. Miller wasn't interested in the politics of the district. He was interested in the numbers. During a routine mid-year review of the lunch fund, he noticed a massive statistical anomaly. Sandra Thompson's school was spending $300,000 more on food per year than schools twice its size. Specifically, the chicken wing consumption was off the charts. According to the invoices, the elementary school students were eating enough chicken wings to feed a small army every single day. Miller didn't go to Sandra first. He went to the cafeteria manager. "How many wings did you serve last Thursday?" he asked. The manager looked at him blankly. "We haven't had wings on the menu in months, Mr. Miller. They've gotten too expensive. We've been serving chicken nuggets and sliders." That was the moment the house of cards began to wobble. Miller pulled the invoices for the last 3 years. He found thousands of orders for wings, all approved by Sandra Thompson, all delivered to a secondary location that the cafeteria staff had never heard of. He contacted the food distributor, who confirmed that the secondary location was a commercial storage facility in a nearby suburb. Miller didn't wait. He contacted the state's attorney's office and the FBI's Public Corruption Task Force. The investigation, dubbed Operation Wingman, was swift and devastating. Federal agents tracked the money from the school's lunch fund to Thompson and Associates maintenance, and from there to a series of personal accounts and gambling credits. They found that Sandra had spent over $400,000 at a single casino in Hammond, Indiana. They found records of a $900,000 home purchase in a wealthy Chicago suburb, paid for in cash. They found that the $1.4 million she had stolen was almost entirely gone, liquidated into a lifestyle of excess that was as fleeting as it was criminal. By March of 2024, the evidence was undeniable. Agents had recorded Sandra's voice on verification calls with the distributor, posing as a district official to authorize the fraudulent checks. They had surveillance footage of her entering the storage unit where the ghost orders were allegedly delivered. And they had the testimony of the cafeteria staff, who described a principal who constantly pressured them to cut costs and stretch the food while she was siphoning off the very money meant to buy it. The arrest, as seen in the footage, happened on a rainy Thursday morning. Sandra was in her office, ironically, quote, finalizing the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. She was dressed in a coral blazer and gold jewelry, a pen in hand, looking every bit the professional administrator. When the investigators walked in, her first instinct was to deflect. "I'm finalizing the budget. What is so urgent?" she asked, her voice sharp with the authority she had wielded for 14 years. "The district audit found $1.4 million in the lunch fund diverted to your personal accounts, Ms. Thompson," the investigator replied. "That was a reallocation for student services," she shot back, not yet realizing that the reallocation excuse wouldn't work on the FBI. "We have the invoices, Sandra. We have the storage unit. And we have the casino records." The color drained from her face. She looked at the papers on her desk, then at the camera. For a moment, the pillar of Harvey was gone, replaced by a woman who knew she had been caught. She was escorted from the building in handcuffs, past the classrooms where she had once taught, past the cafeteria where the students were eating the meager meals she had provided, and out to a waiting, unmarked car. The news hit the town of Harvey like a physical blow. Parents who had trusted her with their children's well-being felt a sense of profound betrayal. Teachers who had looked up to her felt sick to their stomachs. These stories don't get covered enough. We see the big headlines about corporate fraud, but the quiet looting of our public schools is a tragedy that affects our most vulnerable citizens. If you want to see more investigations into the people who betray our trust, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next part of this story, the trial and the impact on the students, is something you need to hear. The trial of Sandra Thompson began in June of 2024. The prosecution laid out a case that was as much about heartbreak as it was about math. They brought in boxes of quote, ghost invoices. They showed photos of the luxury cars and the casino chips. But the most powerful evidence came from the victims. The prosecution called the school's cafeteria manager, Maria Gonzalez, to the stand. Maria had worked at the school for 15 years and considered Sandra a friend. "She told me we were in a budget crisis," Maria testified, her voice trembling. "She told me we had to serve smaller portions of milk. She told me we couldn't afford fresh fruit anymore. I felt so bad for the kids. I would sometimes bring in apples from my own garden because they were still hungry. To find out she was taking millions for herself while we were counting pennies for milk. I can't even look at her." Another witness was a 12-year-old student named Marcus. He had been a lunch monitor in the cafeteria and remembered the days when the food quality started to drop. "We used to have hot pizza and wings on Fridays," he said. "Then it just became these cold sandwiches every day. We asked the teachers why, and they said the school didn't have enough money. We thought we were the reason. We thought maybe we were doing something wrong." The defense, led by a high-priced attorney Sandra had hired with the last of her stolen funds, tried to argue that Sandra was a victim of a, quote, culture of corruption within the district. They claimed that she was being singled out for practices that were common among administrators. They tried to paint her as a dedicated educator who had lost her way under the stress of the job. But the jury wasn't interested in excuses. They were interested in the $1.4 million and the 11,000 cases of non-existent chicken wings. On July 14, 2024, after only 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on all counts: 10 counts of wire fraud, 5 counts of theft from a program receiving federal funds, and 3 counts of money laundering. Sandra Thompson stood as the verdict was read, her stoic mask finally shattering. She began to cry, but in the gallery the parents of Harvey remained silent. There was no joy in the room, only a heavy sense of loss. Sentencing was held on September 20, 2024. Judge William Hargrove did not hold back. "Ms. Thompson, you were a leader in a community that needed you. You were a rollback to thousands of children who looked at your success as a roadmap for their own lives. You didn't just steal money, you stole the trust of an entire town. You stole the nutrition from children who often rely on that school lunch as their only meal of the day. You did it for a Maserati. You did it for a poker hand. There is no excuse for the level of callousness you displayed. The sentence was 120 months in federal prison, 10 years followed by 5 years of supervised release. She was ordered to pay the full $1.4 million in restitution, though the court noted that with her assets liquidated, she would likely only be able to repay a fraction of what she took. She was permanently barred from ever working in education or government again. Her state pension, which would have been worth over $80,000 a year, was forfeited in its entirety. Sandra Thompson was remanded to the custody of the Bureau of Prisons and sent to FCI Waseca, a low-security facility in Minnesota. She spends her days working in the prison's education department, ironically helping inmates earn their GEDs for a few cents an hour. She will be 60 years old when she is released. The $900,000 home was sold at auction, and the luxury cars were seized and liquidated by the U.S. Marshals. The money was returned to the school district, but it was too late for the students who had already graduated, their childhood nutrition compromised by the greed of the woman in the coral blazer. The fallout in Harvey District 152 was systemic. The school board was overhauled, and new triple-check auditing systems were put in place. Every vendor payment over $500 now requires the signatures of the principal, the business manager, and a member of the school board. The efficiency that Sandra had exploited was replaced by a rigid bureaucracy designed to prevent another Operation Wingman. The district also hired a nutritionist to overhaul the lunch menu, ensuring that every student received the full portions they were entitled to. But the emotional scars remain. In the town of Harvey, the name Sandra Thompson is now a synonym for betrayal. The elementary school where she reigned for 14 years was renamed in honor of a local civil rights leader, an attempt to scrub her legacy from the building. Parents still talk about the starvation years, when the lunch trays were half empty. Teachers still talk about the woman who stood at the front of the room and lectured them on, quote, fiscal responsibility, while her car in the parking lot was worth more than their homes. The case of Sandra Thompson is a stark reminder that corruption doesn't always wear a suit and tie and work on Wall Street. Sometimes, it wears a coral blazer and sits in a principal's office. It is a reminder that the people we trust with our children's future are still human, and some humans are capable of a level of greed that defies explanation. The $1.4 million is gone, and the chicken wings were never served. But the lesson of Harvey District 152 is one that every school board in the country should be studying. One woman, 10 years of theft, and a community left to pick up the pieces. Sandra Thompson thought she was showing the way to success, but she only showed the way to a prison cell. The tragedy is that the children she was supposed to lead were the ones who paid the highest price for her education and crime. That case was a masterclass in callousness, but what happened in this next video is even more shocking. It involves a person in a position of even greater authority who did something that left an entire community in shock. It goes beyond theft and into a realm of systemic betrayal that you have to see to believe. Click it now to see the full story.